Shalom, shalom. Let's go over some words that start with the letter Aleph. Some common words, and some Aleph words. So we've got Ak, which this is the letter Aleph with a kamatz, so the Ah sound, and then the CH sound for your het, right? So that's Ak with the hard H, the Ak, and that means brother. And if you're doing numerical values, you get a 1 and an 8, so you get a numerical value of 9 for the Hebrew word for brother, which starts with the letter Aleph, Ak. Hidden goodness is the number 9, by the way. We've already covered Av, which is a numerical value of 3 and means father. Right, so there you get another Hebrew word that starts with an Aleph, and it's the Hebrew word for father. So then I said that we have Abba, which is close to father, but it's a more intense form of father, and it means daddy, right? Put the little dot in the bet, and you get your Abba, right? And Abba has a numerical value of 4 and means daddy. So there you've got 3 of your Aleph words. Let's do another one. So Ahava means love. It's one of the Hebrew words for love, one of the major ones. And if you take a patak under the Aleph, you get the sound Ah, and there's a Hey with a half patak. You get the vet with no dots, so it's a V sound with a kamatz, and you get another Hey. And that has a numerical value of 13, and it means love, ahava. Right? And remember, if you're trying to do the correct pronunciation, if you try to emphasize the last syllable 9 times out of 10, you're going to be right. So ahava. Right? And then you get the number 1 in Hebrew if it's written out. You get an Aleph with its goal, the grape cluster, right? Cha, echad. Right? And that's going to have 1 plus 8 plus 4. Right? So 13, same as love. I made a post about if you double love and you double 1, you get 26, the number of God. So chad echad is 26, and ahava is 26. It's the Hebrew superlative. So God is perfect love, and God is perfect oneness. It's what you get, the spiritual lesson you get out of that. And if you change it to the feminine of the word for 1, you get the first beginning, but on the end you get the letter tav, and you get 2 pataks, right? So we would write that as, instead of the sound like you get here, you have an sound. So you get hot. You get that hard H sound, the het, the ch, right? So you get achat. There's another Aleph word for you. And achat has a numerical value of the 8 and the 1 is 9, and then the tav is 400, so you get 409. So you see, this is where you get lots of numerical values for different words. And as you look into the scripture and you see words that have the same numerical value, you start to see there's a connection between them. So, for example, the word echad and ahava, love and 1, they're both 13. They're both the same numerical value. So I don't think you have to even really think very hard to see that there's a connection between love and oneness, right? So the 2 become 1. The love draws 2 into a oneness, right? Ahava and echad both have the numerical value of 13. So here you get Avram before he changed his name, before God changed his name, actually. And you get And it's a vet, not a bet. There's no dot. So in the Hebrew, in English, we say Av. We say it with a B, but in Hebrew, it's with a V. It's Av Ram, Avram, right? And this little Shiva is a half vowel. So sometimes you would see that written as a little dash, like apostrophe, I guess is what we call that in English. So you'd get Av Ram. When you see that little apostrophe, it's usually indicating a Shiva vowel, which is almost silent, but it's a little tiny sound that if you're a perfectionist, you'll master it. If you're not, you won't. And either way is acceptable. Not everyone's perfect in their pronunciation, even when it's their first language, right? And then when you took Avraham, right? Avram has a numerical value of 243. And here when you take Av with the vet, there's no dot in the middle, right? So you get Av, which is father, remember. So he's a father. It's where the word father is contained in the name Avram and Avraham. And so you get the first beginning, you get Avra, but then you get an additional letter of the Hey that's added to his name. And that's when his ministry became global and more fruitful. And the letter Hey stands for going global and being fruitful. So Avraham, which changed his name to 248 instead of 243. And there's a meaning in that spiritually. We're not going to get into that right now. We're going to stay on track with doing our Alef words, right? So you get Avraham instead of Avram. See where that comes from? So the next Alef word that we're going to look at, we've already seen before. You can see, test yourself and see if you remember. If you recognize it without me telling you, I'm going to tell you in a moment. But you get the Aleph, the Mem, and the Noon. There's the Zere vowel, so main, and the Ah, right? Aleph with the Kamatz, so that's Amen, right? Amen. And you get where when you hear from a Jewish source, Amen, you won't hear Amen, you hear Amen. And that's because of that A sound, the main, right? Remember, it's M is, and then the A is in the month of May, so main, Amen, right? And Amen has a numerical value of 91. Then you have the word I in Hebrew. So if I say I am Benjamin, I would say Ani Benjamin, right? That's how I would say it in Hebrew. That's a short ni, right? It's the hirik, which is the E sound, ni, Ani, right? And that is a numerical value of 61, and it means I, Ani. So we're getting lots of the Aleph words here. I'm going to do a few more. Erase this board, so if you're taking notes, you can pause the video and write that down. I'm going to move on to some other Aleph words for you. So here's a word that you would recognize. People actually name their children this name. It's a derivative of this word. So this is the Hebrew word that means lion, right? A Hebrew lion, the animal. And I'm going to put in the vowels and see if you can sound this out. So you get the patak, which is ah, ar, shiva, right? Which is almost silent. Just an imperceptible little sound. And you get ar, ye. Now, this is the A sound, the zere, remember? This is a yod, which is a Y sound, so you get ye, right? So you get R, and you would get ye. We'd probably write it like this. Aryeh is lion in Hebrew. And from that, you get the Hebrew name Ariel, right? Which, if you look up the meaning, you'll find out it's a lion of God, right? Ariel. El is God. So that's where the name comes from. But there you have an Aleph word, right? Aryeh. Aryeh is lion. Now here's an Aleph word if you're doing gardening and you're out in the garden, or maybe you bought from the grocery store. Here's a food word for you. Now the Vav, you have to know when it's like the Aleph in the sense it has its own sound as a V, but when it has a vowel pointer, it becomes silent, becomes a vowel carrier, and this is the oo sound. So that's why the sound is going to be oo when I get to that part of the word to sound it out. So if you take this word for pea, as in a vegetable that you eat, right? Here's a pea. And you've got fa, that's the F sound. There's no dot in the middle. So you get afuna, right? Afuna. And again, each one of these has a numerical value. Every Hebrew word does. You get 5, you get 50, you get 6, you get 80, and you get 1. So add those all together, and what do you get? 130, 142. So the numerical value of the word P is 142, which might not be very earth-shattering, but if you're searching the scripture and you happen to find a Hebrew word that has a value of 142, you'll know that the two are related. And that's how that works. You have these thousands, tens of thousands of words, and when they match up, you get a spiritual message in the scripture. And it can be a mundane word like P, but it can have a meaning in a passage that points you to something more significant. So you get here, Aryeh, 216 is the numerical value of that word. You see how that works? So there you're getting your Aleph words, right? So what I wanted to show you here is that the very first occurrence of an Aleph word in Scripture is the word Elohim. So we're doing all these Aleph words, but as I mentioned before, the hermeneutics rule, if you want to call it that, the rule of interpreting the Bible, is the law of first mention, and it's a sound one. And if you take first mention of a doctrine, of a concept, of a Hebrew word, of a Hebrew letter, God's written his word in such a way, he's smart enough to do this, to where it all matches up. If you want to find the meaning of a Hebrew letter or concept, take the first mention of that letter, where it's the start of a root word, right? So we're not looking at prefixes and where the letter shows up in the middle of a word, but we want an Aleph word, like I was just doing all these Aleph words. And the very first Aleph word that we have is the word Elohim, right? And by now, see this complicated vowel we have here is the grape cluster, the segol, with the shiva, the rest vowel, the half vowel. So you have sort of a reduced segol, so Elohim. There you get the sharik. So Elohim is the very first Aleph word in Scripture. And it's followed by the very second Aleph word in Scripture, which is the Et, which we said was Yeshua, the Word, right? So very cool. You get to see the very first occurrence of an Aleph word in Scripture, points us to its primary meaning, and then it develops it throughout the Scripture. Get lots and lots of Aleph words. So I just wanted to give you a sampling of Aleph words there. And then I'm going to end this series on expounding upon the Aleph, and the next time I do it, I'm going to do expounding upon the next letter of the Aleph Bet, the Bet, expounding on the Bet. So shalom, shalom.